Take a quick look around your room. As Dr. Timothy Wilson said in Strangers to Ourselves, Discovering the Adaptive Unconscious, there are 11 million pieces of information surrounding you at any given time. And guess how much your brain can process? Only about 40 pieces. Not 40%, 40 pieces out of 11 million. And this truth has a ripple effect in our lives, including in our approach to self-care and well-being. Like I said in the Inner Workout book, there's no shortage of self-care advice and information, but finding people who actually feel cared for, that's a struggle. If we're not intentional, we start to hoard information from books and podcasts and YouTube videos like this one. We get dopamine hits from liking a post or from sharing a quote in our stories. And all of that allows us to craft a persona of someone who's practicing self-care or doing the inner work without actually applying those insights to our life. And that's where this idea of integration and integration breaks come in. I really view integration as the opposite of pure consumption. So in those examples that I was just sharing, it was all about consuming. We're reading, we're listening, we're watching, and it can be powerful to gather that information. But what we can forget is that that's only the first step. Our learning isn't made complete until we integrate it, until we do something with it. And that's why at Inner Workout, we talk about this term called integration breaks. Here's the definition that we use for integration break. An integration break is an intentional pause from the cycle of constant consumption for the purpose of rest, application, reflection, and deepened connection to your inner wisdom. I know that it can feel like the only way to get ahead, to keep growing, is to do more. Listen to more podcasts, read more books, explore more modalities. But in reality, some of our most meaningful progress happens when we embody and apply what we've already learned. So how do you know that it's time to take an integration break or to put more of an emphasis on integration rather than consumption in your daily life? In order to answer that question, we've got to go back to the definition of self-care that we use at Inner Workout. Self-care is listening within and responding in the most loving way possible. And the simplest way to know that it's time to focus on integration is if you're having trouble with either side of that equation. So either you're struggling to listen within, or it's hard for you to respond in the most loving way possible. If you're looking for some more tangible diagnostic points, you might need an integration break if you're searching for a magic bullet. It feels like you know where you want to be, or you know who you're becoming, but it's really hard to bridge the gap between here and there. And so you're trying to fill that in-between space by pulling cards, by reading more, by researching, all in hopes that they will guide you to this answer that exists outside of yourself. Another sign is that your inner voice is getting drowned out by the noise. Remember, we talk about self-care as listening within and responding in the most loving way possible. If you can't hear yourself because you're constantly thinking about what that person said on the podcast or that quote that you saw on Pinterest or in a book, and you're struggling to connect with what you believe, what you think, it might be time to take a pause and focus on integrating. And then lastly, this one gets at the responding with love side of the self-care equation. So if you feel like you are talking the talk, you know all the terms, you can cite research studies, you can talk about what this person said in that book, and yet you're not applying those concepts in your daily life, it's in your head, but it's not in your schedule, it's not in your body, it's not in your mindset. These are all signs that it's time to focus on integration. So in a second, I'm going to talk about 5 ways that you can approach integration breaks. But first, I want to tell you that we built this idea of integration into the Inner Workout app because we know that most people don't have this steady cycle of consuming and integrating. Most of us lean more towards the consumption side of things. So the Inner Workout app gives you the tools to practice self-care with the time you have, to do the things you already know are good for you, to journal, to meditate, to breathe. And then even when we're incorporating learning through our mini courses called Journeys, we're really optimizing for integration. So yes, there are new concepts that you'll learn, there are new things that you'll learn about yourself, but then immediately we're giving you opportunity to reflect and to apply these concepts into your daily life. If you want to learn more about the Inner Workout app, you can go to innerworkout.co/app, or you can click the link below. Now let's get into those 5 approaches that you can take for integration breaks. So the first one is simply to rest. Take a break from all of the doing and consuming and focus on being instead. This approach is great when you can't remember the last time that you took a break, when you've achieved a milestone that you've been working towards, and when you can feel yourself headed towards burnout. The next approach is to take inventory. This is where you review your notes, you look back through your saved folder, you start to categorize your bookmarks, and you'll likely find that what you need most is actually buried in the information you already have access to. This approach is good if you feel like you're pretty intentional about consumption, but you're struggling to actually apply what you've learned. You keep highlighting and saving things for someday, and you know that you've learned a lot, you just can't remember what exactly it is and where it's all stored. The third approach is to limit consumption, and I know for some of you this gave you a reaction. You're like, who am I if I'm not reading all of these books or listening to all these podcasts or however else you like to consume? It feels weird to say, hey, I'm gonna pause on that for now. And I can say from personal experience, this approach has been extremely helpful to me in my own life. So sometimes I'll take a pause from listening to business podcasts, for example, when I notice there's all of these things that I could be doing in running a business, and I'm feeling overwhelmed with information and I'm not applying any of the concepts. Or worse, I'm trying to apply all of them at the same time and it's not working. For you, it might be that you need to stop obsessively consuming about relationships and what they're supposed to look like and who you're supposed to be in the perfect relationship. It might be more helpful for you to not take that content in for a little bit. I know someone else who said, I'm not gonna read any more self-help books for a while. I'm good on that. I need to focus on just being me. It could also look like limiting consumption on social media. The Inner Workout app's lock sessions are great for that. You just can say, these are the apps I don't want to be allowed on, lock yourself out for a set amount of time or schedule it ahead of time, and then you can't even be tempted. This strategy of limiting consumption can work really well when you're feeling creatively blocked. It's also great if you notice that you're just feeling jealous all the time. You're comparing yourself to other people's lives because you're consuming so much of other people's lives. This one also might do the trick if you are like how I was with the business podcast. You're feeling overwhelmed with so much information that you don't know where to start. The fourth approach to integration breaks is to apply your learnings. I don't identify as a Christian anymore, but there's a Bible verse that sticks in my head that says something like, don't just be hearers of the word, do what it says. And I think this can apply in so many aspects of our self-care and our inner work, where we know what makes us feel good in a morning routine or in the evening. We have these tools that can help us respond when we're feeling stressed out throughout the day, but we don't use them. It's one thing to know that this breathing technique or meditation helps with your anxiety. It's another to actually do it when you're feeling anxious. When you make this shift from theoretical to practical, it really does pay dividends in your life. This approach is really useful when you've attended a lot of workshops or trainings. If you've ever heard yourself saying, oh yeah, I should start doing that. Or when you've got at least one book that is like dog-eared and full of notes in the margins. It's time to start applying those learnings. And then the last strategy that I'll share with you is to reflect. There's a saying that you've probably heard if you've been around the wellness space: take what serves you and leave the rest. And my question to you is, when is the last time that you've evaluated what is serving you and what you need to let go of? When you take the time to integrate and to reflect, you get to see what is and what isn't working for you. This approach is useful when your inner voice feels really muted, when you've been exposed to a lot of new ideas and you haven't given yourself time to determine what you actually think about them. And it's also ideal for alchemizing knowledge into wisdom. I hope this video showed you how valuable integration can be. There's nothing wrong with consuming, and honestly, most of us don't have a problem with consuming enough. But if we're only consuming, we're not getting the full impact of that knowledge. We unlock that through integration. So how are you going to integrate your knowledge? Let us know in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like and subscribe, and make sure that you're subscribed to our Self-Care Sundays newsletter too. It's where we send out our podcasts and all the resources that we're creating across platforms. Take care.